I want to talk about horror games, and more specifically, multiplayer horror games. You know, horror games that you play with your friends. Spooky little multiplayer horror games that you play and get a little bit of fright and a little bit of spooks with your friends. Games like Phasmophobia and the many different clones of that game. Like, there's so goddamn many clones of Phasmophobia. Or the, paranormal hunter type of games, like Finding Bigfoot. And the many different clones of that as well. And, the countless others of multiplayer horror games that are out there. For me, they're just not scary. Like, yeah, they're still fun, you know. Like, and they could still be a little bit of spooky and cause you a little bit of fright. Like, for instance, like if a jump scare happens suddenly in one of them while you're playing with your friends, or suddenly you and your friends start getting chased by something, that can be a little bit spooky or fright, cause you a little bit of fright, but it's not really scary, and once it happens, it's no the initial spook and the initial fright is kind of just, it lessens over time, it dampens over time, it becomes less and less, spooky, and less frightening, and it's more, you kind of become, numb to it after a while. You become kind of desensitized to it, and you kind of just, focus on this running around and screaming and having a fun time with your friends and running from things while you're trying to do tasks and objectives and whatnot, and and honestly, kind of just over time, just starts feeling more like, less like a horror experience and more like a video game, which is fine, because I guess that's what they're supposed to do, because it is a horror, multiplayer horror video game. It is what they're supposed to do, and it is supposed to be a video game, but I don't know. It's just not really scary. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still fun. It's still fun to play around and, in a spooky little multiplayer horror game with your friends. It's still fun, and it does what it does, but it's just not scary, It's not really what I go for when it comes to, like, horror games. Like, don't get me wrong, I still do those, still play some of those multiplayer horror games sometimes, just whenever I want to have a fun little spooky time with random people or friends or whatever. But when I really want to play an actual horror game that actually, is actually scary and does scare me and frighten me and make me feel uncomfortable and uneasy and unsettled, I go for the solo experience, those horror games that you can play, that you just play by yourself, that you can kind of engross yourself into the, you know, scary, unsettling, uneasy atmosphere. You can make yourself feel tense and whatnot, and it will make you feel tense, and yeah, because I feel like that's really what a horror game should do, honestly, is, that. Like, don't get me wrong, multiplayer horror games are still fun, like I said, but I don't know. When I play a horror game, I kind of just want to be actually scared and, made to feel uneasy and unsettled and actually frightened and, feel nervous and tense and everything. I want to feel that way. So yeah, I usually go for, the solo experience. I guess I go for each one of those things for different, reasons. If I want to have a spooky little fun time with strangers or friends, I go for the multiplayer horror game. If I want to actually be scared and made to feel uneasy and unsettled and tense, I go for this solo horror video game experience, I guess. But yeah, and I guess they both do what they do, and I see the point of both of them. But I don't know. Multiplayer horror games are just, like I said, not really scary, it's to me. And there seems to be an overabundance of them. There seems to be more multiplayer horror games than there is, you know, actual solo horror game experiences. There seems to be more multiplayer horror, which I guess is alright, but I feel like there needs to be more, solo horror video game experiences. Because, I don't know. I enjoy those more, I guess. But, yeah. I don't know.